In this video, I'm going to teach you how you can get the perfect fit for your bag gusset. This video is mostly designed for people who want to design their own bags, but it's also really helpful to understand why a gusset is the size that it is. So what exactly is a gusset? Well, the gusset is actually the center part of the bag that creates depth, especially if you're not going to be using something like a boxed corner technique. It can be the side of a messenger bag, or it can be basically the border that goes all the way around something like a bum pack. Usually it has a zipper opening, but if you're somebody who likes totes, it's going to basically be just the sides and the bottom of a tote. The thing is, a lot of people have this assumption that the gusset is going to be the exact same length as the circumference of the main piece it's being attached to. They would be wrong. Speaking plainly, if you have your gusset be the same length as the circumference of the main bag piece it's attaching to, you're going to end up with a lot of puckering. It's going to have excess fabric, which is just going to start bunching up the more you try to ease it in. You actually want your gusset to be smaller in length because it's going to help draw in that main bag panel so it doesn't look poofy. I'm sure you've seen some of those. My first iteration on the Perfect pouch was not perfect. In fact, it was super puffy. As I iterated on making the pattern, I had to decrease the gusset so that it would pull everything back. So let's go over that basic formula. Quite simply, you take the seam allowance that you want to use for the bag and you multiply it by 4. Take that number and round it to the nearest 1/4 inch. Then subtract it from the total circumference of the main bag piece it's attaching to. That's it. Super simple. So how do you get all those measurements? I like to use Illustrator, so I'll show you that way. If you want something a little less accurate, you can use a ruler. Have fun with that. So here we are in Adobe Illustrator, which is the application that I prefer these days for basically finalizing my patterns. I've already brought in a shape that's basically the main bag panel for the Perfect Pouch Production Edition. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you have the document tab open. It's not always open by default, but if it is, it'll be up here in the upper right corner. That's where you'll find all your document information. If you don't have the document panel open, you can get to it by going to the window menu and then checking it on. The thing is, as soon as the document info panel opens up, it doesn't really have any information on it that's useful to you. Even if you go in and you select the object, it's still giving you the document info. So how do you get the circumference of that path? Well, the way to get to it is to basically go up to the super tiny hamburger icon that's located way up here in the upper right corner and drop it down and change it to objects. Now it's going to show you the document info for the selected object. The information you're specifically looking for is in the paths all the way down here at length. So we can see that the length of this path is 24.1462 inches. Now I want you to take that value and write it down somewhere. I want you to write down every single number after that period. I don't want you to round up or down. That's because you could cascade yourself into a series of poor choices when it comes to math. Let's apply the formula. So let's say I'm going to use 3/8 of an inch for my seam allowance. That's going to be 0.375 inches. I want to multiply that by 4, which gives me 1.5 inches. We take the circumference of the main bag panel, 24.1462 inches, and subtract 1.5 inches from it. That leaves us with 22.6462 inches. I'm going to round this up to the nearest 1/4 inch because 0.65 is closer to 0.75 than 0.5. We're left with 22.75 inches, which is what our finished gusset length should be. Now, unless you like bags that you can't actually open, you're probably going to want to chop up that gusset into 2 pieces. The topmost piece is going to be where your opening is, and then the bottom is your bottom gusset. You can do this easily in Illustrator by dragging a guideline down and then using the cut tool to cut your pattern in half. That means basically splitting that path. So then you have a top and a bottom. Giggity. Now, if you go back into Illustrator, you can activate your ruler in your document by doing Control-R. Ta-da! it's a ruler. Now to create a guideline, you just click on the ruler and then drag it down. So you want to take the guideline and put it basically where you think you would want to divide that main panel. So we're going to put it there. This creates an extra object for you. You can see it over here in your layers panel. It's aptly named guide. Now I want you to take that and lock it by toggling the lock here on the layer panel right next to the little eyeball. That's going to protect you from cutting that instead of the bag. Now if you want, click and drag with the middle mouse button, and then I'm going to zoom in, drag over to where that line is intersecting, and I'm going to press C. That hotkey is going to bring up the cutting tool, which is going to let you cut your path. So then I'll come in here, and right when it says intersect, I want you to left mouse click, and then you'll see that it's cut it right in that spot. But you got to do the other side too. So we're just going to middle mouse click and drag our happy little butts right over to the other side and do the same thing. Hover your mouse over until you see it intersect, and then left mouse click. Now we'll zoom back out, and you can see that when I go to select the path, there's two now. And if you look over here at the layers, you'll see two paths. Now I'm going to grab the selection tool, and then I'm going to drag over and select the topmost path. I'll go over to the document info panel, and I'm going to record that length. So we're looking at 10.7966 inches. And just as before, don't round it. Now I want you to do the same thing to the bottom path. Select it and then record its length. That's going to be 13.3496 inches. Now we need to take each path measurement and determine how much they contribute to the full circumference. We get those values by taking the length of each path and dividing it by the original full circumference. Then I like to round up to the nearest hundredth to make it a little simpler. So 10.7966 divided by 24.1462 is equal to 0.45. And 13.3496 divided by 24.1462 is equal to 0.55. If you take those numbers and multiply them by 100, you basically get the percentage values. So the top is 45% of the total bag circumference, and the bottom is 55%. You can get the correctly partitioned sizes of the top and bottom gusset pieces by multiplying the length of the gusset by each decimal value from the previous step. Round the result to the nearest quarter inch. For example, to calculate my example top gusset would be 22.75 multiplied by 0.45, making it 10.25 inches when rounded. The bottom gusset would be 22.75 multiplied by 0.55, leaving us with 12.5 inches. Add them together to confirm. Now I'm just going to use my mouse wheel to scroll down so I have some visible space on my artboard in Illustrator. Then I'm going to go over to the toolbar and select the rectangle tool. I can come down here and just click on any open space in the artboard and pop open the rectangle tool. Here's where you're going to put your measurements in. For the top gusset, I want 10.25 inches for the width. The height is going to be whatever your depth is plus seam allowance. So just to make things simple, I'm just going to do 3 inches and go with it. Hit OK, and your rectangle's been created. Scroll down and do the exact same thing for the bottom gusset. So click on the artboard and put in 12.5 inches, and then the same height. Hit enter, and there you go. Now at some point you're gonna have to sew these two things together to make the full gusset. Right now the measurements are assuming that it's the full gusset already sewn together, so you need to add in the seam allowance. So take your seam allowance, multiply it by 2, then add it to the width. I totally could have done this with the previous step automatically, but I'm separating everything just to make it easier to follow. I could basically just change this to 11 inches from 10.25 because that is 2 times my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Do the same thing for the bottom gusset. So now that will be 13.25. Now the remaining step is basically taking that top gusset and splitting it however you feel is necessary for the type of closure that you want. That's a separate topic that's beyond the scope of this video, so I'm not going to cover that right now. Now you're probably wondering, well, what about bags that have an open top, like a tote bag? Well, that's actually quite simple, really. You still do the exact same calculations. It's just when you go to divide up the pattern so that you're going to figure out where the gusset top and bottom goes, you just basically do it at the top corners. And then you don't make a top gusset. So there you have it. Easy peasy math. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, or I'll eat your soul for dinner. Just kidding. I'm full.